tied to Gangsters, dude.
The Gangsters actually did the crisis.
Oh,
The missile was a
be honest, I
Like,
didn't get your
physically.
presentation, didn't come through.
Well, I didn't have some.
How dare you?
I'm trying to
Not,
figure it
not
out.
you, not you,
Not
other
Miss
Fiona.
Fiona.
Oh, other Fiona. Not you, not you. Pull. Okay.
Give me 20 seconds.
Goodbye.
What is it like John Travolta from?
Well, it's not. It is Lucky Luciano. Get pranked.
Yeah, right. People to get.
Is, wait, is the camera going?
I don't know. Is it supposed to have a red light? Because I don't see any red light on it.
Jimmy.
It is going, I see you.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Can I speak now?
Let's go, here we go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I did Lucky Luciano. He's a pretty interesting guy. I'm gonna say cool, but that is inappropriate. Okay. This is Lucky Luciano. So, first of all, he was born in Italy, in Sicily, and he is the middle child of 5 children. And he has 2 older siblings and 2 younger siblings. At birth, his name was Salvatore Lucania. And it's really unclear of necessarily like when his name kind of changed, because like eventually he changed his name to Charlie, and some sources say that it's because he didn't like the nickname Sal or Sally, because he didn't think they were masculine enough, but that's not actually like for certain, and we don't actually know necessarily when that happened. But he was born in 1897 in Sicily, Italy, and he got supposedly the nickname Lucky from like how good he was at craps games and how good he was at avoiding arrest. Supposedly he got the nickname Lucky around 14, 15 years old when he kind of started getting heavily into gang things. His family emigrated to the United States when he was 8 years old. They moved to New York City, specifically Manhattan and the Lower East Side. He ended up leaving school at age 14, and his parents sent him to Brooklyn Truancy School. So he was not being a very good child. And he was kind of involved in like gangs on the streets and stuff, specifically like Irish associated gangs, and they would like let Jewish students like pay them like 10 cents a week for protection, which I thought was kind of interesting. Then basically I'll get into this, but he did a bunch of crime in between 14 years old and 1936 when he was arrested. So he was arrested in 1936, and then he was eventually convicted on 62 counts of compulsory prostitution. And then in 1946, just 10 years later, they deported him back to Italy. They said, get out of our country. And then less than a year later, he went to Cuba, which I'll talk about. And then he eventually had to go back to Italy because Cuba was like, we don't want you here either. And then he was arrested again in 1947, but then the charges were dropped on insufficient evidence, and then he was released like less than a month later. And then he ended up dying from natural causes from a heart attack in 1962. So in Italy. So he died. Okay, some crime associations. He is considered like the big boss of New York City for a very long period of time. So he initially was a part of the 5 Points gang, which was when he was younger, and they mostly just did petty crime. And then in 1920, he started working for Joe Masseria, who was the head of the Genovese crime family in New York City. So that was like kind of a big deal. And then in 1925, he had become Masseria's chief lieutenant, directing bootlegging, prostitution, and narcotics distribution. So pretty big crimes. And then in October of 1929, he was attacked, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. That was crazy. And then in 1930 to 1931, there was this thing called the Gang War, and he was working for Masseria at this time, but then he had Masseria assassinated, which was crazy. And so it was like Masseria versus Maranzano, and Maranzano. And so they were like going against each other. And this guy was like, oh my God, like I win basically because he got assassinated. And then less than a year later, he had this guy assassinated. So he basically took out both sides of the gang war, which was crazy. And then, sorry, I'm too excited about this. And then the other thing is he was like humble, but not really. So like people would call him like the bosses of all bosses. He was like, there's not a boss of all bosses in New York, but like really he was, and he would like still call himself that. And then this is like the little Italian like way that he would say it, which I thought was kind of funny. And then, yeah, so he was the most powerful gangster in New York for like an extended period of time. And he was also very well known for developing the National Crime Syndicate, or the cartel. So kind of a big deal. And then in 1935, Thomas E. Dewey, who is the head of prosecution, started collecting evidence against him. he was mentioned in Fiona's yesterday. He refused to let anyone assassinate Dewey because he thought it was too suspicious. So like multiple people that were underneath him were like, no, we gotta kill him. And he was like, no, don't do that. So then he ended up like killing that one guy because he wanted to kill him. So there was like a whole thing. So he's like kind of protecting Dewey, which he really shouldn't have been, but yeah. And then he continued, he like eventually was sent back to Italy, and then but he continued to direct drug traffic in the USA when he was in Italy. So still had a very heavy influence over crime in the United States. Okay, here's some of my favorite stories. Operation Underworld. Okay, so he gets convicted of 62 counts of prostitution, right? Of compulsory prostitution. They're like 30 to 50 years in prison. He's in prison for like a couple years, and then they're like, oh, World War, we're really scared. We need your help. And so while Luciano was in prison, the United States government offered him commutation to help connecting with different crime families and individuals to help secure the border. And that was both in New York City and like on the coast, as well as in Sicily. And so the Office of Naval Intelligence was concerned about German and Italian individuals entering the country through the New York waterfront. And they were also worried about sabotage in these facilities. And he provided the US military with Sicilian mafia contacts, and the collaboration between the Navy and the mafia became known as Operation Underworld. And so because of his help with this, he was only in prison for 10 years. And they were just like, please just don't fight back when we deport you. And then he didn't, and he just went to Italy, and it wasn't like a super big deal. So I'd say that's pretty lucky. He was going to be in there for 30 to 50 years, and they gave him commutation. He just got to go back to Italy. And then Frank Sinatra in Havana, another one of my favorite stories. So immediately after they deported him to Italy, he went to Havana in Cuba under the guise of going to see Frank Sinatra perform, which was like a big thing with a bunch of the crime like families. So they'd say like, oh, we're all just going to meet up to watch Frank Sinatra, and then really they would just talk crime. So really a bunch of head of gangs were just meeting up there to discuss business and like drug cartels and all of that. And he was hanging out with Frank Sinatra so much and so publicly that that's how the United States government found out that he was no longer in Italy and was in Cuba now. And then they were like, Cuban government, you must deport him. And so then they deported him again. And this all happened within like a year of him going back to Italy, which I thought was really funny. Okay, his 1929 assassination attempt. This is another thing where I'm like, wow, he's so lucky. So he became the rare gangster to survive a one-way ride. He was abducted by 4 men in a car, beaten, stabbed repeatedly with an ice pick, had his throat slit from ear to ear, and was left for dead on Staten Island Beach, but he survived. And he never named his abductors, and some people say that he changed his name to Luciano after this attack. So, like, he most definitely should have died on that beach, and somehow he did not. Okay. Here are just some, like, funny, like, little interview blips that I found of things he was saying. So there was this guy named Captain Mooney, and he was like, what's your business? And he said, horse racing. No. And then he said, are you involved in the white slave trade? Which is what Thomas E. Dewey tried to claim was like the compulsory prostitution. He called it like a white slavery prostitution thing. And then he said, never heard of it. And then that was kind of like the end of the conversation. And then he just went back to himself. And then this was another thing that I thought was funny. He was talking about his like relationships with one interviewer and like why he never had kids. And she said that he never did it because he didn't want his son to be associated with Luciano the gangster, and said that he really did not like that Thomas E. Dewey made him out to be a gangster, which I think is so funny, because what do you mean you're the head gangster of New York and you think you're not a gangster? So that was one of my favorite things that he said, probably. His downfall. Obviously, the prostitution case. I would say, like, to a degree, this is a downfall, but they also didn't get him on so many things. He did a lot more crimes. And then the imprisonment was a big thing. In cross-examination, they called him out and they were like, say you make $22,000 a year, and you clearly don't. And then all of his failed return attempts and eventually his death, which was from natural causes, so I don't really think it's a downfall. Nobody killed him, somehow. So my thoughts, I think he really lives up to the lucky name. And yeah, I think he's a really interesting guy, and he did a lot of bad things, and he got away with a lot of it. So yeah.
He's a great story. I love that. Lucky Luciano. Good job. You have 1,000 things. He's involved in everything.
Yeah, a lot.
And he's the capo. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The head of it all. All right. Good job. Oh, all right. So, oh, one thing about Thomas Dewey. Thomas Dewey was the guy who. No, but he was the guy who Harry Truman in 1948 beat for president, what was considered up to that time the biggest political upset in American history. Was Dewey. How did he get famous? I think it's working. Give me a sec. Here it goes. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. I'm a little bit out of order, but we got it. Good. All right. Go.
Alright, so I did mine on the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So the background of this, it was the Prohibition era, and the main event of the St. Valentine's Day murder was between Bugs Moran and the North Side Gang and Al Capone and the Chicago Outfit. They're the two big gangs of Chicago. And they had a heavy rivalry between the two. They always tried to kill each other. Many assassinations attempts at each other. And that's from a movie, which is the St. Valentine's Day Massacre movie. So it was on February 14th, 1929 at 10:30 in the Lincoln Park garage. That's what the garage looks like. This is the crowd after. This is what they like supposedly happened. It's actually this is what they sketched out. And that's the address of where it was. The address is now like destroyed. They took it down like I want to say 1967. And so the event was there was a murder of 7 Chicago gang members and 2 associates, or technically 5 of the associates. And so 5 members of the Moran's gang and 2 others were murdered by a group of men. 2 of the men were dressed up as police officers. And they were lined up facing the wall and they were shot with a Thompson submachine gun and a sawed-off shotgun. There was 70 rounds fired from the Thompson submachine gun, and then 1 cartridge was discarded from the shotgun. This is a reenactment of it. This is the actual event. And 6 of them died immediately, and then 1 of them lived for a short time after. That is Frank Vincenberg. And he was rushed to a hospital. And the police were questioning him, who shot you? And he wouldn't admit. All he said was just, he said police did this. And then he died very shortly after. And Moran was supposed to be there, but he was running late because he saw the police cars outside from the supposed police. So he and 2 other members just circled around and got a cup of coffee before they went because it was a meeting. So there was a heavy investigation, and basically everyone knew it was Capone who did it, especially with all the like rivalry between all their assassination attempts on each other and all that. But there was an FBI investigation. They found the police officers of the 2 people who dressed up as police, and they finally got Al Capone for tax evasion. And then there was the public reaction. The public was very shocked by this. It was from coast to coast. There was news everywhere about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And they said the violence had become too much to bear. And Capone's biographer said, this crime stirred people in a way that they had seldom been stirred before. From coast to coast, people seem to suddenly be reaching the conclusion that a line has been crossed. Violence has become too much to bear, and the experiment known as prohibition has blown up once and for all. So he said that as basically everyone was done with prohibition and the gangs were done with it. And it just caused all this violence and all of these people dying. And that's all the people surrounding the garage and looking in. And like they're even standing on like parts and cars to look at it. There's not much else I could find on it because it was kind of just like a one day and done thing. But yeah.
That's a great story. And you know what happened right after in Chicago?
I don't remember. I couldn't find it exactly.
Yeah, that's when they figured they better start getting the,
Yeah.
and that's when Elliot Ness, who would later be in
Oh, yeah.
another, yeah, Elliot Ness would come in.
Mhm.
Yeah, good one. It's a great story. I mean, everyone talked about the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. All right, good job. Now, Moran's gang never really recovered. Who would like to go next? This one? Sydney, would you like to go? I popped up, say, but he's not here. Oh, we need Bonnie and Clyde. Sec. Okay.
I did mine on Bonnie and Clyde. So the background, they met in the early 1930s, and their entire crime spree was also during the early 1930s. But obviously during that time, the big thing was the Great Depression, and so there were so many bank robberies going on. It was like insane, especially in like the area that they were in, like Texas and the South. So Clyde was he had a very long criminal record. Even before they met, he started doing crimes at 17, and he went to jail before they met for 20 months, I think. And almost all of his crimes were theft. And so he was part of a ton of different groups that stole a ton of different things. And then he would go on to rob more banks with their gang. And then Bonnie, she didn't have as much of a criminal record, but she was known to have a lot of attention-seeking behaviors. She would perform at any chance that she got. And this kind of comes to their how they do their crimes and how they react to getting caught. Which we will see. And then she was also a poet, which I thought was interesting. She wrote a ton of poets about their gangster friends. So she wrote the story of Bonnie and Clyde, of course, the story of Suicide Sal were two of her most popular poems. And they're quite fun. But I mean, it's very just like these guys are cool. Pretty much, it's like this was about this story of Suicide Sal. She's like, these guys that like I met this cool gal. Or something that she says. Okay, so basically all of their crimes, they were known for being super big and flamboyant, and they loved the attention that they got, and so they just kept making things bigger and bigger. Originally it actually started with Clyde wanting to just rob enough money to do a prison raid, because he just wanted to get back at the Texas the corrections system. And then it just fully snowballed into them wanting more and more attention. And most of their crime happened in a pretty short span. It was 21 months before they ended up getting shot. And they weren't able to continue because they just kept getting bigger and bigger. And their gang began to grow, and it became known as the Barrow Gang, for Clyde's last name. And so Clyde's brother and his wife joined, and then Ray Hamilton and W.T. Jones were also part of it. A fun fact, they never stole more than $1,500 from one place, but it isn't actually that big of a deal because $1,500 then is $36,000 today. So, that's like a cool thing, but it doesn't really amount to much because stealing more than $36,000 is very difficult. And they again started with small, just theft, but then they just started to shoot and kill anybody that got in their way. It started with police officers mainly that would catch them, then they'd kill shop owners, and then it just kind of was any bystander that saw them, they would be killed. They were infamous for taking hostages. So what they would do is they take the hostages to make this like big deal out of it, but then they'd often just let them go. So they take hostages and then sometimes they even give them a little bit of money to get back home. Which I thought was interesting. But yeah, it's very silly. And then again, most of the crimes that they committed were in either Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, or New Mexico. So just the area that was plagued by bank robberies in the 1930s. So these are my two favorite stories. So Bonnie got severely wounded because she ignored a construction sign and then she just kept driving. And then because of it, she ended up flipping off of the road. And then got covered in like car battery acid or something, and her leg had like third-degree burns all the way down, and she basically couldn't walk. And so family took her in and nursed her back to health. But then immediately after they let her leave and she was finally able to walk again, they went and they shot and first they kidnapped the sheriff and the city marshal in that same city with the family that nursed her back to health. So after she got let out, she immediately went and kidnapped the sheriff and city marshal and then took them as hostages and then left them handcuffed to a tree together. So they were like handcuffed, they couldn't leave and they were just left there. Right after this family in the town nursed her back to health. And then the big thing that was like their life goal was the prison raid that they were able to do. So it was East Tim Prison. That's a picture of the prison. So it wasn't great. It was pretty inhumane. And he wanted prison reform essentially. And so he did that by doing the prison raid. And in the raid, he helped multiple people escape and then shot and killed a ton of different officers at the prison. And then the prison raid actually triggered a manhunt for Bonnie and Clyde. But even with the manhunt going, they just continued to do bigger and bigger things. They ended up robbing and killing about I think there was a total of like 5 after the manhunt started. They just kept doing it. And they were like, well, we're not going to get caught. Which is a great segue into them getting caught. So their love for attention ended up being their downfall. So one of their friends in the gang ratted them out to the police and they got ambushed on a street while they were driving. And they were cornered by 6 police officers. And as soon as they saw it, both groups opened fire. And they ended up being killed by the police officers. But the police officers ended up shooting 130 rounds of ammunition for just the 2 of them. While they were driving, they were killed almost immediately in the gunfight, but they just kept shooting. And the police officers, there's an interview, and they were like, well, we had shotguns, pistols, and automatic rifles. And we just really wanted to make sure that we were safe because so they just kept shooting until all 6 of them were out of ammunition in every single gun that they had. So this was a car after they got killed. So you can see just how many bullets were shot.
You were just shooting for sleep.
Yeah, and they were both sitting up here, so they were really just shooting everywhere. Making sure they covered all of their bases. And then this is the guns that they found in Bonnie and Clyde's car. So that was just in the car. So they had plenty. And then this is just an interesting story related. My grandpa, this summer, he was like, my grandpa owned a bank. And so my great-great-grandfather owned a bank and it was in the 1930s and they got robbed down in Texas. And so he's like, it could have been Bonnie and Clyde. And so when I asked him about it, unfortunately, he didn't have very many memories and instead asked ChatGPT sent me pictures of their conversation because he thought that would really help me. And so I don't have a ton of information, but just based on what he said, not what was the response. Two people came into the bank. They tied up my great great grandfather and then one of the employees, and they stole a ton of money, but none of it is documented digitally. Because it was in a small Texas town of less than 1,000 people. And I don't think it was Bonnie and Clyde based on how flamboyant and outward they were about their crime. And this one wasn't. They just kind of came in and out and stole money. But it could be. I can't confirm nor deny, but he was pretty excited to tell me and send me his wonderful sources.
Well, sounds good to me.
Okay, so their legacy, they kind of just became known as like the bank robbers. They are super known for all of their robberies, and there was a big pop culture thing, and there's still like all of the stereotypes are used in movies with armed robberies and hostages. And then Bonnie kind of became like an icon for the feminist movement a little bit. Where they were like, well, look, she's a rough gangster. Women can be gangsters too. And it's so she kind of got taken as this like female icon, and she was portrayed as this tough girl that could go up against any man, which I thought was a little interesting. But yeah, that's funny and fun.
Questions? All right, good job. Yeah, there's a lot there. All right. Great, you wanna go?
Okay. Good. Go. All right, I am doing Pablo Escobar. A little bit different from all these American gangsters, but very, very good. So he's a notorious Colombian drug lord who amassed a huge fortune selling cocaine in the late 80s through the 90s. He's the top boss of the Medellin cartel, and he's responsible for a lot of just unrest in general in South America during this time period. He was born December 1st, 1949 in Rio Negro, Colombia, near Medellin. His father was a farmhand and his mother was a school teacher. He grew up with a lot of siblings and his family was impoverished, and from a young age he just got into crime kind of early. Like he would steal tombstones and polish them and sell them back off. He stole cars, stuff like that. But his parents, it was important to his parents that he went through school, so he went all the way up to university, but dropped out to focus solely on being a gangster. So he started working in a cartel in his 20s, and his job was to hold people for ransom, and he was really good at that, if you know what I mean. But in 1976, he helped create the Medellin cartel. Cartel's main goal was to produce and distribute cocaine. It was mainly smuggled to and from countries like Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador at first by Colombia, but then it was kind of started getting sold a lot to the U.S. because there was a really high demand there, and it was easy for them. Cartel used planes, boats, hidden vehicles, and secret routes to move drugs. And during this time, Escobar became known for using a lot of violence to protect his business. He would pretty much just kill anybody who got in his way. Judges, police officers, politicians, journalists, and rival gang members were often threatened or killed if they tried to interfere. And then one little fact that I thought was funny is he would like if he was trying to bribe like a politician, he would ask them plata o plomo, which translates to silver or lead, meaning that like you can either take the bribe or get lead, which I don't know. I'm actually taking the bribe.
So,
So by the late 1980s, the Medellin cartel was smuggling an estimated 70 to 80 tons of cocaine into the U.S. each month, which is just an insane number, unbelievable. By this time, he had amassed vast power. His estimated net worth was 30 billion US dollars at this time. And I looked it up and it said that that was like the entire GDP of Colombia in the late 1980s was around 35 billion. So he had almost the whole GDP of Colombia. Well, he was worth that much. He owned tons of mansions, private planes, luxury cars. He had a private zoo at his house. He got involved in the public sphere and got into politics, and he was actually elected as a member of public Congress. So he really did have a lot of power. But in Congress, he was able to like help out a lot of poor neighborhoods. He paid for some housing, like soccer fields and parks, other community projects. And because of that, he was kind of seen as like a Robin Hood figure, if you will, even though he was still doing a lot of bad things. And then like an estimated 750,000 people were estimated to be linked directly to the Medellin cartel. So like they were either getting direct bribes or paying for drugs or getting funding from the cartel, which is crazy. It's a lot of people. So Pablo Escobar, he eventually became one of the most wanted criminals in the world by a bunch of different countries. But this is a really funny picture. This is him and his son in front of the White House when he's like the most wanted man in the U.S. He was seen as a Robin Hood figure by a lot of people in Colombia, but he also did stuff like he was blamed for the Avianca Flight 203 bombing, which killed over 100 people, and then he also bombed a government building in Bogota, which killed a lot of people too. Those are just two examples of him, being a narco terrorist, which he definitely was one, a bad one at that. But another funny thing is he started paying debts of Colombia, and in return, the government wouldn't extradite him to the U.S. So it was like really hard for the U.S. to get him and prosecute him. In 1991, he eventually surrendered to Colombian authorities just because they were able to thwart him in so many different ways. But he negotiated a deal that allowed him to stay in this private luxury prison. She was like one of the only people staying there. And he was still able to run the cartel from there pretty much. And it had like a soccer field, a bar, personal guards, like TVs. So he's pretty much just, I don't know, just camped out in this spot. But he was still able to run the cartel. When the government moved him to a real prison in 1992, he escaped that one. And then on December 2nd, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, he was killed. He died in a shootout with the police. Some influences and legacy. There's a Netflix original series, Narcos. It's pretty good. There's a lot of tourism in his past home. Like you can go there and see the zoo. His narco terrorism tactics are still used today. He was really powerful, and a lot of people follow him. There's still that Robin Hood myth in some parts of Colombia that he was like actually a good guy and he just wanted to help out the common people. But he's really popular still globally today, and I think that overshadows the progress and culture of Colombia. It's pretty developed country nowadays. And I'm pretty sure Colombian Bam Bam came from his selling of drugs. But overall, I think, obviously one of the most successful and powerful gangsters in history.
Do you know about the hippos?
Yeah. So he had 2 hippos in his private zoo, and after he was killed, they didn't really know what to do with him, and they started reproducing, and They got like out of control. Didn't they kill a person?
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, they've killed. They're still there.
There's hippos roaming now Colombia.
Oh,
Because
They
of
come
that.
out.
yeah.
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 There's just free roam. He has a lasting impact.
Yes,
Yeah.
the hippos are gonna take over.
Yeah. They
Plot twist, the hippos now run the cocaine trade.
They're perfect. All right, good job. All right, let me see. Get Pablo out of there.
You know what? People like, I feel like
Myra, you want to do Murder Inc? Give me 1 second. Okay, go.
Okay, so murdering, that's the other name for it. I thought this was gonna be a lot more complicated than it was, but I think it's actually pretty simple and very to the point of what it is. So murdering, basically, it was just a ring of people hired to kill. Very simple. These two were the mainly in charge of the entire thing and were kind of like the heads. Kid Twist and Bugsy Siegel and those ones up there were they were like second in command, and then the people who did most of the killing were the key squad members. But yeah, not too complicated, it's just a ring of men killing people. They they had a Brooklyn-based enforcement arm of National Crime Syndicate as a murder for hire group for the Italian-American Mafia and Jewish mob. They estimated they killed around 400 to 1,000 people, and some of them we can't they don't have an exact number. They specialize in murder, assault, and intimidation. The headquarters they used was a local candy store, so it was a front, and then if you went to the back, they had all the stuff for the crime. You could hire them to kill most anybody that you didn't want, but they did focus mainly on other mob members, high crime, or law enforcement and stuff. So they avoid killing just basic civilians unless you cross them over really badly. That's the candy store. That's the outside of the candy store and the inside the candy store. And they did actually run it as a candy store too. You could just go buy candy there. It was just a normal business with the background of you want us to murder someone? No. Yeah. Their downfall was probably the most interesting thing was the federal money laundering stuff. They had a feud with 50 Cent and G Unit, the group. So them having problems with them kind of led to what they were doing becoming a little more publicized. And the overall, they were actually doing what they agreed to do, so they kind of got pushed off to the back. And then management and just their creativity kind of started lacking. And so they just started repeating what they were doing too often, and they lost. One article said they lost their creative spark, which I was like, that's one way to describe murdering people. And both these artists say that they have absolutely nothing to they argue with them. We don't really have anything to do with them. We barely do them. And I don't think they never hired them to kill anybody. It was just association of acquaintances and something, and they were starting to get to the gang was starting to get a little too prideful about what they were doing, and it was starting to make a lot of people head away. And then the biggest hit they've ever had was Dutch Schultz, and he was killed in 1935 alongside with his associates after defying the syndicate aboard by trying to kill Thomas Lee, which apparently he's everywhere. Everywhere. That's the right thing. It was a normal hit too. It wasn't anything special. They just yeah, very simple. Other than that, I looked into a couple other they did. I couldn't find anyone of significance outside of the mob world, so it was there was a couple things where someone tried to hire them to kill presidents or certain politicians, but they avoided doing that because they were no, we're good. And all members did eventually go to prison. I believe 2 of them committed suicide quite quickly after being arrested. The rest of them served time. A couple of them got out because they didn't have as much involvement, but that was when they were old and they didn't do much after that. And it kind of just faded away. There's no remains anymore. I tried seeing if you could go to where the candy shop is, and I'm pretty sure it's been replaced by something else, but like, you could still go there. They have a little plaque talking about it. That's about it.
Was our field trip. Any questions? Yeah, that's interesting. They would kept going to these elements for a very long time. It appears.
How long was the span? If it was 1945 and then.
It kind of, but they slowed down. It was like a 20 to 40 years, because apparently some people were like, well, they stopped for a while in the middle and then they picked back up. So the last killing is unconfirmed. They don't actually know which was like who was the very last person. You can look it up, and there's a couple articles that say it was this like, one man, but there's still believe that after that they still managed to kill 3 more people. So we don't actually know exactly when they like fully stopped. Because they were all in prison at the exact same time. Like it took time to catch everybody. They did, but they got the 2 I can't remember what goes best for the 2 main ones, but one was the feud with 50 Cent. That was just they knew him for like most of the time they were running. And like I said, he didn't actually like it wasn't like a feud in the sense of like they were fighting. It was they were getting too prideful and they were being kind of like pushy about it, and 50 Cent's like, no, not me. I'm not don't involve me in that. There's plenty of other stuff going on. Clearly he also 50 Cent had other things he was focused on. If anyone's been paying attention to media once last years. So.
That seems like almost got 2 different groups there. By the way, you named Kid Twist. Remember Kid Twist was one of the characters in the same? They used that name because he was a well-known gangster. All right, good. We can get one more in. Beth, you want to go?
But I go tomorrow.
Does anybody else want to go today? Good. Have you turned yours in?
Yeah.
I checked earlier, then give me, good to go up there. I will be just a second. After all, these are great presentations. Nice job, everybody. Oh, I got it. Yeah, I just went up through it. Give me, it'll pop up in a sec.
You like puppet?
I do like it a lot. All right.
So I did gangster movies. Only was able to do 2 because quite busy. We've had obviously a lot of them. Scarface, Goodfellas, The Godfather, name a few. But for the first movie we'll be looking at, it's not even completely a gangster movie. It's Reservoir Dogs. Which was a movie by the man Quentin Tarantino. Awful man. But he makes some pretty good movies, sadly. Basically, this was a whodunit type movie. It starts off with a some people getting some jewelry. They organize some people, and a robbery happens. Some people die, and basically they're trying to figure out who ragged on them, who was it like an insider with the cops. And the twist at the end was really good.
Don't say it.
I won't say it, obviously. I'm trying to do less spoil as many. Yeah. But yeah, it was great movie. The amazing scenes. I thought it was really funny. Not funny, more just like it was kind of charming that each character was like named after a different color. Like there was Mr. Pink, Mr. Orange, Mr. Blue, and then there was Eddie.
My favorite color.
Yeah, my favorite color, Eddie. I love that one. But yeah, and this was kind of the only movie that I rooted for a cop to win at the end. So yeah, it was, and it leaves with like a bit of an interpretation at the end. And I really like that. And then the second movie I did was The Godfather. Like you kind of have to when you're doing a presentation about the mob movies, and this one I really enjoyed as well. It had one of the best openings that I've ever seen in a movie. And it just like it was very nice to see like a lot of pop culture because this movie is like this very ingrained into pop culture nowadays. Like a lot of quotes like the day of my daughter's wedding, and an offer they couldn't refuse. And one I heard a lot when growing up was look how they massacred my boy. And it was I liked it. I really enjoyed it. Doesn't actually really follow the Godfather right there. More of Michael. He's at the bottom right there. And it was more of a growth of how he got into that role as the Godfather and to the Godfather, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good movie. But out of the two, which one I thought was better and which one I enjoyed more was Reservoir Dogs. I really enjoyed that one. Really, I hate Quentin Tarantino, and he did eventually do another kind of movie like Reservoir Dogs with like the whodunit type situation, which was The Hateful Eight, which I cannot recommend because it's also very racist, sadly, but it's a good movie. Walton Goggins is in it, and I love Walton Goggins. And yeah, that's presentation. Done.
One quick question. What makes it like a gangster movie? What are the kind of things they do in a gangster movie? Like the tropes, common
Tropes, a lot of mass violence, like a lot of blood. Like the themes of just vice in general, debauchery, especially in The Godfather. And sleeping with the fishes.
What's that? Thing like that. Yeah. Okay, any questions? All right, well, we got time. Oh, wait, got one.
Who wrote The Godfather?
I forgot to look. I'm sorry.
It's a novel, God, see the name of it. It's an Italian name, and the name's on top of my head. And as soon as everyone leaves, I'll remember. Let's see what comes to us. Nice job. Good job. Thank you. Good. All right, so we'll pick it up tomorrow. These have been great. These are fun. The quick presentation, you guys. I know there's a lot of stuff you're skipping. So Beth, you going first? Tomorrow?
Yep.
Second? Cassidy, you're third. I don't care what it's like. You're third. And you're fourth. Yeah.
Sid and I will not be here tomorrow.
Why do you hate America?
We will be flight mission.
That's American.
You go tell. No, you go tell. You tell Mr. Duncan that we're tired of this stuff. We are tired of it.
Mr. Caffrey and Mr.
We're talking the troika of evil.
I'm so excited. Partridge, let's see how bad my sunburn is. Hopefully.
Well, you can call for shit
remember
bad.
sunscreen, but I tend.
I'll bring sunscreen.
And you have to force me to apply it. because
Don't bring
I probably-
sunscreen.
Here's the
Start
thing.
baby oil.
No, this is a genuine problem. This is a genuine problem, Partridge. I am the palest person in my mother's side of the family, okay? So I get made fun of a lot for being so white because they're all tan and they don't burn because they're super Sicilian and I did not inherit those genes to the degree that they did. So here's the problem. It's a lot of them just do not bring sunscreen to functions because they like don't burn. And so then June ends up suffering because I don't have any access.
So let me, since I've heard this tale of woe, you are responsible for yourself.
Like they're like, yeah, we packed all the necessary beach things, and you know, I go, oh, of course, sunscreen is included in that list, and then I show up to the beach, and guess what's not in the bag?
And this has happened more than once.
Yes.
So you keep, next time it's gonna
I
work,
was
right?
just scared.
What do you
the
call it if
children
you keep
were
doing the same thing over and over again?
The definition of
Foolish. They used me to scare the children this summer at our family like reunion thing. I got so sunburned that one morning I wake up and there's 3 little girls hovering over my bed, and my uncle's going, "Do you want to look like June? I don't think you do." And they go, "Oh, I don't want to look like June. She's so red." And then they all ran away screaming. And then they put on their sunscreen. I was just like, "They're moral of this story." I don't want to be the moral.
No, you're
Come on.
not. Where's the?
I gotta be honest with you, you're handling this quite well.
Yeah.
The little children are scared of you, but, and you just think it's all right. Good job, everybody. Nice presentations. Bell did ring.
Like ran away in fear.
Thank you so much for that. You're good people.
I can imagine watching little girls walk up and. Yeah.
What stories are you gonna tell us today, Mr. Partridge?
How we nearly blew the world up.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually a remarkable thing.
The amount of broken airplanes.
Go now and see you. You just wanna walk by. See my writing prowess. I was a Miles City Cowboy. I was a mascot for the Cowboys. Oh, well played. Oh.
I was checking. Let's check. Let's check. What's us? That pretty chance. Wow. No. Wild stuff. What's for a short wild stuff? You gotta do this.
And what's the basis? Tell it that. But I say something is so big. How much money? I don't know anything about it, but I offer to freestyle rap about anything for $2. And how much really much?
That is awesome.
Then you can also do it. Anybody could do it.
Make on the nationals.
No.
You guys think it's sponsors?
Well, we make.
Stack talk about Benny's Beach. We have open list. Benny's Bistro inside the sponsor. Benny's Bistro.
I don't know.
That was Jack's job. I was like my mother would actually play over there. A task about to have the bistro. So we'll actually have to be these. Nope. It's so it's not good. It was so dumb. Case. South Central Alaska. I didn't want to go there. Oh, what? No cows. Still West Virginia. Oh, you're that really do it. No way. Look at it. Oh, what? You're not making up like that.
Your questions aren't people going to Iowa.
There's like people like in London. You say the other thing, like, about that. I was Muslim.
I was Iowa once.
You can't write on red there. These like, yeah, who's really true or something. Still right on track.
I'll get, there's a few I'll get talking about. Let me do a roll really quick. Gangster movie.
Hey, if you look for Aiden, Vegas,
Oh, that's an imposter. Speaking of yeah, racing.
Cassidy, Elizabeth, Bonnie, and Clyde. We got a lot of presentations.
That's a bad way.
everyone 99.
It's like everyone. Not Saturdays. It's not bad. I wanna get my English. I'll go to you last week.
Not fun, beverage. Give me 1 sec.
It was close. Basically. Actually, he said.
I got stuff. I got.
Yes, we need to grad for Mr. Partridge. It's you get one.
He has one too. Oh, I have the same.
We found that rat with the pizza cape and the crown,
Oh, where'd you see that at?
at the last of the food store.
He bought it as
Someone
a
gave it.
prom gift.
Someone gave, that was that last one, that's pretty funny.
Wow,
I didn't know where it came from. I was very impressed.
it is a very impressive stuffed animal,
It's really cool. Great minds think alike. Thank you.
Yeah.
of course.
We didn't sub, we just chose.
Why isn't this working? Let me take roll. This stuff I'm gonna talk about today, I will ask a question on the final stuff that happened on October 27th.
After really got tired of work. Hey.
No.
That's not that
The
simple.
role appointment happens on Wednesday. Number two, he's not going to his role appointment tomorrow.
Plan for those? We really need to for and.
I haven't half a dollar to build this man.
At this point, it's just embarrassing. It's gotta do a point where I can't argue with you, you're just in. You're debating like. How much? Insurance content is in that one document? What did it say? It says on again. Oh.
This is not like a $10 guy, right? Like,
I don't care how many calories we drink. How much are your daily shirts?
One sec, there's still some coming up, Brian.
Actually.
78% of the added risk of things.
Okay, how much is in one? What's sugar in one free song?
You go naked freestyle? I don't know.
21 grams, you're at 1 plus.
I would say, nah, I would like. You said no.
I said. Okay, so we are currently at 80. Not including gallons.
So, change of plans on checking in books, because tomorrow's the AP language, right? And I'm basically gonna have no students second, third, or fourth. And I don't wanna then do the check-in right the day after because everyone's gonna forget. We're gonna do it next Tuesday. Drop a day, Monday to talk about, so everybody bring their books in on Tuesday. I'll remind you again, but please bring everything in. And if you don't, they will fine you immediately and it'll go on your permanent right. And the fines go up, and this, it's not me, it's all them. It will go up exponentially every day. Exponentially, that's what I heard, it's the new math.
He's getting himself to that.
No, please get them in. Actually, they're gonna, supposedly gonna put out line cards earlier this year if you don't get them in. Because they have to be out of here so much because of the asbestos abatement that's coming. So they have to be out of everything, so they want to get things going. So please get them in, so I don't have to worry about it. Crush them.
The library.
Yeah, if let's say you brought your books in tomorrow and you just want to go, just drop them in the library. I think that should be no problem. I will,